Hello, everyone, and welcome to FCI Live 2026. We are in our second week, and we're really excited to have grocery industry basics for startups. I'm going to tell a little of the history of why we're having this session in just a moment, but we're really excited to have Jade Barker here from Columinate, who is not only an amazing cooperator and someone with tons of experience, but specifically has startup experience. She has been in your shoes, if you don't know Jade, and we'll let her introduce herself a little more in a moment. But real quick, every time. I want to first thank our FCI Live champion sponsors, Frontier Co-op, Cabot Creamery Co-op, and National Co-op Grocers. These three cooperatives together have made it possible for us to make the whole series free to everyone across the country, and for us to have so many amazing, talented cooperators here to share with you to learn from. So thank you to them. All right, so you're here for grocery industry basics for startups. And I'm going to stop sharing it and let Jade get her slides ready. But while she does that, this one is happened because you guys asked for it. And I want to be real clear that we listen to you at FCI, and the movement is the movement. We're here to serve the movement. A lot of the wisdom comes from you all. And one of the things that you told us was, this is all great, all this training on pro formas and picking sites, but we don't understand the basics of how the grocery industry works. And so we end up talking to cities and they go, well, what about this? Other grocery stores couldn't survive. I don't know the answer. Like people saying, well, we can definitely be way cheaper than Walmart. And we're like, no, you can't. Well, if you had the information about why, you would understand and come to the same conclusions, what you all told us. Lesson heard, lesson learned. We heard you. You guys need to understand this industry you're in. And we thought, who better to share this than someone who has been sharing this information with boards and startups for a long time and has been in your shoes and knows when your startup co-op, how much do you really need to know? What are the big questions about understanding the industry? So I am going to hand it over to Jade Barker to share more with y'all.
I just need to unmute myself and share
You are unmuted. You're
my,
good.
yep, and share my window. Can
Perfect.
folks see that?
It looks
Yeah.
great.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's so good to see you. I'm very excited to be here at FCI Live. I have a special place in my heart for startup co-ops. As Jake was saying, I've been a member of co-ops since I was 19, but I started my food co-op volunteer slash consultant journey in 2002 when I joined a startup effort in my community near Northampton, Mass. And when I started that, it wasn't because I wanted to be a grocer. In fact, I had zero interest in being a grocer. It didn't look like a very challenging. I thought it was kind of like the library. You go in, you pick something, you go up the front, check it out. And didn't want to sell groceries. I wanted to save the world. But now, after 24 years of this and working nationally, I was on the board of my home co-op for 19 years and working nationally for over a decade, consulting with food co-op boards, both startups and established. I've learned how important it is that we do know something about the grocery industry. So what I'm going to offer you today will not make you a grocer. So do not get ready to go out there and be the person who runs your business. Please don't do this. But I'm offering a very superficial overview of the grocery industry. My effort is the leadership piece, like being on the government steering committee. So trying to bring enough for you to know that you get a sense of, oh, okay. And so hopefully it'll pique your interest. You'll have questions and things that you'll want to explore later that I'm probably not the best person to answer, but there will be questions and answering at the end. So let me see. So let me start off with our first slide. I particularly like this image. I think it's beautiful and inviting, and there's nobody there to bother us with our grocery dreams. And so, unfortunately, this is not what the grocery landscape looks like. This is quite a bit more accurate. And here are some of the sharks. They're in the water. You may recognize some of these big names. And so, grocery, there's a lot of grocery in our country, a lot of people in this business. Um, and knowing a little bit about it is grocery stores. There's all sorts of places now. It used to be people either grew their own food or they hunted and gathered it, and then there were some grocery stores. And now, as you can see from this slide, there's a lot of different places where people get their food from. And while grocery stores are right now one of the most prominent, there's tons of other places that people can get food. And these are some of the tendencies that people have. We've noticed if you go back in 1961, there weren't that many of us spending trillions of dollars. This is in trillions of dollars. And we just increased more and more eating food away from home rather than buying our food from grocery stores. Here's some data about online grocery. It really picked up during the COVID years, and it's actually not stopped growing. These are some predictions of how much people are going to be buying their groceries from online. Also, meal kits. I don't know if any of you ever tried meal kits, but these are a thing. I've actually had a couple. A girlfriend of mine likes them. They're another way where people can get their food, and that makes the grocery landscape more competitive. There's entrepreneurs now that make grocery delivery a thing. A lot of us think we need to deliver grocery, but so far we don't know of any grocer that's made a living doing this. Some of the delivery services are doing okay, but it hasn't really translated. So I'm going to look at some of the bigger names in grocery here. I don't know if you can even read there on the left. This was a 22. This is the best um, image I could find to describe the big names in grocery in the US. As some of you can see there, Walmart, quarter of the groceries sold in the US are sold by Walmart. I sometimes, when I talk to groups, I tell them, you will be competing with Walmart. So don't forget that. It doesn't matter where you are in the US, where you open your store, that people will probably have a Walmart that they have access to in some way. And so, and as everybody knows, they have really good prices. Now, this is where I talk about co-ops being grocery being a volume business. You're sort of familiar with the idea that the more you buy, you can buy it cheaper. Well, that's really true in grocery. And this is you're thinking, oh, I just want to serve my community. Why do I need to even think about this? And I have a little bit in a minute to talk to you about how volume will impact your ability to sell your goods at a low price. Now, recently at a national co-op conference, this Robinson-Patman Act was mentioned. It's an act that for many, many years prevented huge monopolies in grocery. And there's been some talk about the idea that in about maybe 20 years ago, that or a little more, whenever the Reagan administration was around, they decided to stop enforcing this act, and this made it now it was a thing that now I've heard some people say it's too complicated. That's not why they're enforcing it, but really it meant that the small guys had access to food and groceries at the same price that the big guys did. That is no longer the case. And so National Grocers Association and others blame the lax enforcement of this act on forcing independent grocers out of business. There used to be a lot more grocery stores. There were one on the street corner in my neighborhood when I grew up, and it's long gone. So I'll explain a little bit in this next slide about how volume impacts prices. I thought about showing you all a slide about margins, and I talked to some folks and we said that's like a half an hour description to describe how margins impact. So I'm not going to go into that. So this might end up remaining a little bit confusing to you, although we'll talk about margins later. But if you look at this graph, this is an example that one of my grocer colleagues created. I did not create this graph, showing a half-gallon milk. I don't drink milk. I don't know what it normally costs. I don't know who knows what it normally costs. Let's imagine that you can buy it from the wholesaler at $1.60. Your co-op can buy it at $1.60. Here are two different co-op options. You see that Walmart comparably probably could buy that same item for $1.35 from the wholesaler. So already there's a differential in how much they have to pay for it and how much we have to pay for it. Then if you look at the retail price, in order to even look reasonable, we want to try to sell it for, $1.99. I think I calculated out that the price that we'd have to sell it at a food co-op to actually make money on it would be something like $2.50. But as any of you know who walk into a store and you see an item that you know how much it costs and you see it costing a lot more in a store, you will probably just turn around and walk right out. So for things like this, co-ops and other small stores have to sell them at a loss. And so here are a couple options for pricing, 199 and 169. They're both more than the 149 that Walmart sells it for. You might also notice that the price that Walmart's selling it for is less than we can buy it from the distributor. People notice that this is just a sample, but this is not an unusual situation. And so if you look on the far right column, this is how much of a loss that each organization is making. So you could either lose quarter on the sale. You could lose 40 cents on the sale. And Walmart loses less on the sale because they actually have a much conventional grocery has a much lower margin than natural grocery. And just to explain, the numbers I'm going to be giving later are going to be related to natural groceries because we are in a lot of co-ops are in that business. We have more data about it. But I'll talk about that more later. But just to give you the understanding that this is how volume impacts your ability to share products
There was a
cheaply.
quick question about the red
Oh,
number and what it
yes.
represented, that column.
The which, oops,
I'm sorry. There,
the red number.
that's the loss, meaning like after you take out overhead and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that people are used to buying are sold at a loss at smaller stores. In fact, my colleague Tim, he said those stores, that have like a pharmacy and a meat department and all these different kinds of things around the edges. He says some of those stores, everything in their center store is sold for a loss. So if you can consider that you don't have those categories at your co-op and you're having to sell and make a living off of things that your competitors buying cheaper than you and then selling at a loss, that's a very hard thing to convince your shoppers to come by your co-op. Um, so I liked this headline, How Corporate Consolidation Broke America's Grocery System. This is from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. There's so much data on how much corporate consolidation has impacted grocery, and that's not entirely what we're going to talk about here, but you're just not alone. Now you're thinking, oh, well, no, I'm starting a co-op because whatever your reason is, it's a good reason. But you're still, your people who are buying your products from you are not necessarily going to know that, right? You're the person that's going to have to let them know and help them understand why your co-op is important to the community because people are very price sensitive. And so they'll be looking at the prices. And that's just, I mean, I'm price sensitive and I know all this stuff. So let's go to the next one. So this is on the natural foods industry. A lot of startup co-ops want to do either conventional or they want to do a mix. But I thought this would be informational for folks anyway. This is a graph from 2005 to 2025, and this is looking at national natural food products. And that big blue area, that's how the natural foods has products has grown from a $56 billion in 2005 to over 320 billion 20 years later. That's a lot of growth, right? What is that? 6 times, something like that. So as you see over on the far left, this red line, that's how much co-ops were growing in their sales year over year. So we could make a lot of mistakes in food co-ops. We could have a party and have a good time. And because we're making almost 20% more the following year, it covered a lot of mistakes for us. At that time, big box stores weren't selling very much, or those corporate stores weren't selling very much in national products. But at that point, less than 5%. But as you can see from the green line, their percentage has increased over time. And but this is actually that number is their growth in that area. So it's not actually the number, the percent. They sell a lot more than we do, but they weren't growing very much. So the red line, as you can see, sort of dipped dramatically. And what I heard is this is when natural foods went from an alternative lifestyle to an aspirational lifestyle. The folks that got into it were able to say, hey, these foods are actually better for your family. They're not like some weird hippie stuff that you want to avoid, right? So people started to be interested in it. And once the big guys got in, they're very good at selling. It's what they're in the business for. They're there to make money. We're not there to make money. We're there for our values. So we actually don't necessarily do the same kind of promotion that they do. But so co-op growth was hovering around 2%, some stores less, some stores more, until actually last year. Last year, we had a big bump in the amount of co-op growth. I was shocked actually when I looked at the data. I've been doing this for a long time at 2% co-op growth and to have almost 8%. And this number is from National Co-op Grocers. That's a co-op of food co-ops nationally, and they keep this data from all their co-ops. And so that's a big thing. And I was reading through the data on, well, what do they attribute this to? And part of it is really just becoming better operators. Co-ops are learning more how they need to appeal to their communities, how they can't just sit on their laurels and be nobler than thou. They really have to create something that people want to participate in. And it's the same with conventional. You have to have something. You have to do something to take them away from those other stores. So moving right along, I wanted to throw this in there. If you build it, will they come? So there's this with a lot of with market studies, and I know some folks do gravity market studies. There's this belief, people move to a community and they see a sign of a grocery store, and that's how they pick their grocery store. They pick the nearest one near them. And so when folks have started figuring out where they're going to get their food, it's not actually that easy to shift them away from that. Even if you're offering something that's you think is better, how is that going to land for them? So when we build our co-op, we assumed they would come. Unfortunately, they eventually did. We did lose money the first couple of years. We planned that. It takes a while for folks to find your store and start shopping there and start seeing how completely cool it is. But you have to be really on the money about when they first come in. It's got to be a wow. At least that's what my experience has been. So this I've got the beautiful thing, and then on the right there, I found Mount Everest. So I like to say when you open your store, you're at base camp. Now, people do climb Mount Everest, but let's not forget that there's actually that you've opened it, you're ready to go, but you've also got to figure out how you're going to make your place in the system. So that's sort of external factors. There's a lot more going on in grocery. There's so much online if you want to learn about the trends in grocery. It's a really fascinating, actually, and how they like work with our minds to convince us to buy things that we don't need or don't want, but also just how to be prepared. Folks are not I want to say, people are becoming savvier consumers. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are seeing growth in co-ops. There was a big bump in January for a lot of co-ops when the new administration got in power because people started to think more about where their dollars go. So I think consumers are savvy, and if you're able to get them good information, they'll make good choices. So we're going to look now more internally on how co-op finances work. So I'm going to look at the budget of a food co-op based on the dollar of sales. And so I'm calling this the grocery pie, and you'll see why in a minute. Um, so co-ops historically have not had a very strong relationship with profitability. And I thought that was really important to pull out because mostly we don't do this to make money. In fact, co-ops don't tend to make, if they make a penny on the dollar, they're doing well. And it costs a lot to make that penny. So people are doing it from a motivation to make change, to serve people's needs. But one thing that we need to remember is that in order to uh, create our mission and succeed in our mission, we actually need to make money. We can't spend more than we're making, or we won't be open very long. We won't be able to accomplish very much. So I've got a little pop quiz coming up. And if you already know the answer to this, don't share, but I would ask you to put your guess answers in the quote if you really don't know. So, first question. How many groceries in dollars does a typical food co-op have to sell to generate $50,000 in net profit? If you'll enter your answers in the chat. And really, guesses actually, I learned this in grad school that when you guess, even if you guess wrong, you're going to learn more than if you don't guess at all. So please put your numbers. Oh, I love
Oh,
this.
here comes numbers. All right.
Yeah, yay. You guys are awesome. You get gold star for the guesses. Spot on. Okay. So so how much groceries would you have to sell to make $50,000 in profit? 5 million. So if you think about that, that's a lot of groceries. And on many of us make about $50,000 a year for our own efforts. So thinking about this huge, massive enterprise, coming up with that at the end of the year, that's something really to think about. Some ways a co-op might use that. Here's some ideas. So you realize even if we're thinking about it as profit, it's actually something that the store probably is going to need to spend to stay relevant and keep up to date. Another way a co-op might use that profit could give a 46 cent an hour raise to your 50 employees. And they're going to love that, right? 46 cents, people get really excited. I don't see too many smiles. Okay, moving on. And you could also patronage dividends. That's something because the co-ops were able to do. And I do remember the first time I got my $2 check from the co-op for my patronage dividends. It did actually get me to shop more. It was such an exciting moment of being able to patronage dividends are based on how much folks use the co-op. So let's look then, moving right along, at another little quiz. And again, if you just know the answer, don't guess. But if you're really guessing, Give this one a shot. What's the single largest expense category at a co-op? So please put your entries. Oh, good job. Yeah, keep it up. More ideas. This is great. Yep. You guys are the gold standard. I love this. All these guessings are fabulous. Okay, give you another minute to think about that. So when you walk in your co-op grocery store, um, what what is the thing that the most money is spent on? And let's look at the answer. Cost of goods sold. Any surprises? I was surprised to learn this actually, that our biggest expense is the things we're selling. And let's take another look.
We had one person who got it right, Dr. Terrell. Good job.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of strange when you think about it. It's like, and we'll look into the dynamics of that. We'll look into the numbers in a minute. Um, so let's look at this is the co-op budget pie. So this is based on, again, natural foods. The cost of goods sold is 63% typically and that's the big red thing. So when you think of all the money that's coming in and the dollars that you're spending, the bulk of it is going out to the wholesalers. And then the co-op is left with this sliver that's actually not even half of the money. And this part over here is called margin, which you'll probably hear a bit if you end up talking to grocers at all. That's what they talk about is margin. And they try to get more margin to pay for things. And here's some of the other categories that we'll talk about a little bit. Um, and typically, co-ops will do their finances in percentage basis because the numbers are just so hard. This makes more sense. Um, so what kinds of things impact the cost of goods? Oops, I hit the wrong thing. Okay, great. So volume, like we talked about, that can actually lower your prices if you have a big volume, or you control shrink. And shrink is losses. Let's see, we have that. Yeah, loss due to spoilage, damage, and theft. And when you think about it, food is an industry that actually has a significant amount of shrink just built in. In produce, if something doesn't look that good, they're going to have to throw it away. If something doesn't sell rapidly enough, it expires and has to be moved along. And so they're saying about 50% of shrink, though, is shoplifting and 50% from employee theft. So there's all sorts of opportunities in those aisles for people to grab this. And I know I just had a conversation this week with someone who was trying to get, oh gosh, maybe I think this was at, I remember now where it was about co-ops in inner city areas having problems with theft, more problems with theft. And they were at a conference and they said this guy who knew the statistics said that is absolutely not the case at all. The biggest concern with theft is actually employees. That those are the people that steal the most from co-ops, and there's reasons for that. But that's not, to think that if you're a store in a poor environment, you're still going to deal with shrink, but it's not going to be any more than other folks. So let's look at. So this was the area that people thought was the biggest, possibly the biggest one, and for good reason. So personnel is the biggest chunk of what's left of a co-op, the co-op budget pie, and the things that influence that are wages and benefits. Co-ops want to give good salaries to people. So we try to give competitive wages if we can. What some stores do, grocery stores do, is have people work part-time so that they don't have to give benefits. But a lot of co-ops will try to put as many people as possible full-time so that they can get benefits and make it a better job. Staffing levels, you don't know how many people are going to come in the store on a given day and how much staff you're going to need there. And so trying to guess that to the best of your ability, you can imagine having a store where you have too many people and they're standing around not doing anything, or you have not enough people and people don't get good service and they walk out. So it's a challenge there. And then also systems. And thinking about systems, this is where for startups, you're thinking, well, why do I need to know all this? For startups, there's some decisions that you make that are going to impact your systems going forward. And I'll give one example of I work with a co-op that doesn't have a loading dock. And so all of the groceries that get sold have to come in their front door. And not only that, they don't really have a very convenient storage space. You have to go down a narrow staircase to put the groceries in the basement. And then when it's time to sell them, you have to go down that same staircase and bring them upstairs and load them. And so this has actually really increased their personnel costs. It makes it really hard for them to be competitive in pricing and cover their costs. My home co-op, we ended up building in a rock quarry, and we have 94 parking spaces when we opened in 2008. And 18 years later, we still have 94 parking spaces. So we went from, I don't know, 50 or so staff to over 200. And so we have to lease a parking lot off-site. We have to hire a driver and a van, and we actually pay staff for the commute time from the parking area to our stop. And we didn't have a lot of other options at the time we built, but those are the kinds of decisions when you make them, they're going to be impacting your store. So here is everything else on this, and that has to fit into that 13% little dash there. Oh, by the way, I think I forgot to mention that the personnel costs are always being pushed up, and you guys are aware of that. Benefits go up outside of your control. People expect raises. Inflation forces that as well. So looking at everything else, here we've got some issues. So occupancy, 5 to 6%. So National Co-op Gophers has come up with some standard, what do co-ops normally pay, but this is actually varies across the country. Sometimes folks have gotten a good deal on their site in some way. Did they get a good price? Did you get a good price on your lease or not get a good price on your lease? I'm working with a co-op right now that has a really unusually high lease debt, and they're really, really struggling. Their ability to sell their stuff at a reasonable cost that the consumers will buy is hard based on that. Or, you might be in the case, well, you know what, we're getting our building. People are donating the building. It's an old church. And it's like, oh, well, think about your utility costs going forward. And these older buildings are harder to heat, to cool. They don't have all the modern conveniences that some of the newer stores can be built to work on. So there's a lot of stuff that you're in the decision of making decisions right now that are going to impact your store's ability to survive. Um, so some of these other things, if you look at them, operating expenses, most of them are things you have very, very little control over. Administration, the 1.5%, the professional fees, office supplies, dues, subscriptions, things that you need, buying trips. So in the end, what ends up for a lot of co-ops is the two areas they really have the most control over are their marketing budget and their expenditure on governance. So as you might be able to guess, if you got rid of your marketing and you weren't telling anybody about what you're doing and you didn't invest in educating your board, that you probably might be starting a downward spiral. So this is one of those situations where I've learned in retail that you've got to spend money to make money. So you're not going to save your way into making money in retail. In a short period of time that you might be able to cover some bills or extend, get your accounts payable down. But ultimately, in order to make money in this business, you really need to input cash, infuse cash.
So glad
JQ, I
you
see
said
you.
that. I'm going to just give you a question in a second, but I just cannot say enough about how much we have seen a big factor to startup food co-ops not hitting their sales goals when they open was that they didn't put the amount of money in marketing they were told to put into marketing to save some cash. So I just want to amen that. But the question is, why is credit card fees in red? Someone asked.
Um, I think, it just stood out to some of us that they're 3% usually, and they're like three times as much as the profit that we make. So these are just it's the fact that some of the costs that we pay are just they're things they don't move. We don't have any control over them. And we actually must. I think we need to take credit cards and debit cards in order to be successful. I know some folks try to convince their um, owners to use cash. I don't think that's a winning strategy. So I see people say, "Oh, use your." I'm like, yeah, you might do it for a little bit, but I really think these are costs that we have to have. And I pull it out because you don't always think about that. Like, oh, that's right. We have these set things that we don't have a lot of control over. And that's something to think about when you have all the dreams that you have for your grocery store. Is how are you going to pull that off? And I actually think where there's a will, there's a way. I think that we humans do know how to solve problems, and this is something that we've been working on for a while. So I did want to say a couple more things about this. So marketing. So I worked with a co-op. So Yes, we need to have marketing. People need to know we exist. But there's a special sauce that co-ops have that a lot of other businesses don't have, and that's our local. We're very, very, very local. We have relationships. Co-ops are about relationships. And some co-ops have been very creative in how they use their marketing funds. I know that for a while, Green Star of Co-op in New York was investing its marketing money into local nonprofits that served um, uh, things that the community was interested in, especially they were doing racism work for a while. So they were just finding local organizations. And I know a lot of food co-ops that do that. They do roundup or they spend money on making sure that the things that their community care about get funded. Um, Other stuff. Yes. And newsletter soap, moving right along. So this is the little 1%. Now, sometimes you might end up making more in grocery. This happens. Some of our healthier co-ops are doing a little bit better right now. We had used to be 3% was considered pretty good, and then we got down to if you were doing a 0.5%, you were pretty good, or surviving. But it varies. Some of it is taking out with discounts that they're um, part of what we include to try to have our members recognize that we value them. But also, I know River Valley has a very pronounced Food for All program to serve folks in the community that can't that have a tighter budget, and that's something we invest a $500,000, almost $500,000 a year is what that program costs us to be able to support those discounts for folks. So those are important things that are part of who we are. And
Oh, I
then
love this question. Can I ask
yeah,
you, Jade? I think you're
yes,
gonna like it
please.
too. What is the difference between giving member discounts and getting patronage?
Well, that's a great question, and I love it. So member discounts, and I'll first, anybody who's gray-haired here can remember maybe that we had this thing, if you're in a co-op and you show your member card, you'd get a 2% discount at the register because what had happened, this is what I've heard, is that food co-ops figured out that um, their average profit ended up being about 2%. And so instead of going through all the effort and work of keeping track of what everybody was buying at the end of the year, figuring out how much they were going to pay them back, they would just do a 2% discount. And this became something that people expected to get from food co-ops. But what we discovered is that when you're not profitable, the 2% is not is not you don't get a patronage when you're not profitable. Patronages are only paid when co-ops are profitable. And so we were giving away money we didn't have. And so that ended up not actually being a winning formula. So most co-ops do not do that anymore. They'll do special member discount days just to show appreciation for members. But a discount is something that you would get at the register, and a patronage is something at the end of the year, depending on how much you've spent at the co-op. Let's say you're a single person like me, you don't spend as much money as maybe a family of 10. But you would get, depending on how much profit the co-op made that year, they would distribute a portion of that to you. And that's pretty cool because it's one of the things that makes our co-op stand out is instead of your power and authority in the co-op being vested in how much money you've invested in the co-op, your power in the co-op is how much that you're an individual. Every individual has the same amount of power. But you also benefit from the organization to the extent that you patronize it. So when you use the co-op to do your shopping and you feel your needs at the end of the year, your patronage dividend will be bigger than the person that doesn't use the co-op. So it's related that way. And also patronage, a dividend. It's a great thing for co-ops. It's unusual in that, as far as I know, it's the only business model that's allowed to do this. If we return the patronage to our owners, the co-op does not pay taxes on that amount. So it's a nice way to reduce our tax liability for the co-op. Does that answer that question?
I think
Yeah.
it was an excellent full explanation, and I'm so glad people asked it. Thanks, Jade.
Yeah. And I just love it. I mean, it's something that reminds us that we do own the co-op, that it's for us and it meets our needs and aspirations, and that we can only do this because we're stronger together. So I'm gonna do the next slide. So this is where does the co-op then find the money for all these things? So that's a question. I'm sure most of you are doing startups. You have a dream. You're not just going to sell groceries, right? You want to be special. You want to meet the needs of the community in a way that's profound and meaningful. And so my recommendation is be awesome. So this is a picture, a little ad that my local co-op did, River Valley. Someone had sent us a letter that said, Dear River Valley Market, I just want to say thank you for being such a great market. It wasn't until September I found out about River Valley Market and I love it. The staff is great too. And that's really part of what we try to be is in every co-op I've been to, there's a sense of belonging and being at home and I think that that's something that we cultivate. But yeah, be awesome. Find out what it is. You're in a special situation as a cooperator that lives in your community to find out what it is that your community cares about and to provide that. And it might not be just groceries. And so having your local grocery store involved in the community in a deeper way, I think is part of what keeps people attached to their co-op, loving their co-op, appreciating their co-op. But it is also just that feeling that you get at a co-op. So I want to bring up some key takeaways of this. But first, actually, I'd be interested in asking you all just to take a minute, just from this really very high level, i.e., superficial overview of the grocery industry, what are some things that stand out to you, either that you're surprised about or that you think will prove valuable to you moving forward? Just off the top of your head, please enter those into chat. Don't be shy.
Say this group hasn't been shy previously. Oh, here they go.
Takes a while to type.
Yep. So no wiggle room.
Wow.
Difference between membership pages discounts. Importance of identifying your unique competitive advantage. Even the idea that even a Coke grocery must have loss leaders. Such slim margins. Importance of advertising. Budget pie was really helpful.
Yeah. So, great. And feel free to continue putting those things in. I think for me, what was really powerful is understanding how, well, I'll just show you what I came up with for the key takeaways, and then I will talk a little bit more. So the competitive environment is tough and getting tougher. And so I don't, we don't want to be like the other grocery stores, right? That's our advantage. We just have to find out what is our niche, what is the thing that we are offering. And I know we're offering something that's better than what they can offer because of our community, we're community owned. Management navigates within a narrow confines to operate the co-op at a profit. So the kind of fun, cool things that we want to do, we can do, and the co-ops do them. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there figuring out how to have, you know, special events in the community, um, having educational things that they offer, special products, and getting involved in issues that service the community. Like I know co-ops, many co-ops have developed ICE response plans for how they'll be addressing ICE if and when they come to their community. There's a lot of things that co-ops do figure out how to do. So don't think that this can't happen, but you do have to temper, especially as a startup, your requests, I think, of management. This one was the reason I'm now feeling like startups need to know more because decisions you make now could impact your co-op far into the future. I heard a story, and I don't know what it was, but someone told me they were working with a startup that had done some unique, cool architectural feature in their store that was unchangeable, and that was costing them $500,000 a year because it got in the way of however their flow was. I don't remember, and I don't know what it was. I see some nods. So that's why to me, it's like that extra 200 bucks an hour you need to spend for an expert who has experience to look at your plans and to give you feedback it's gonna be so valuable in the future. And that's why, I know it might get tiring for you guys to hear from FCI to, you need to earn enough money. Don't start undercapitalized. Make sure you have the capital that people predict that you need because um, scrimping in the beginning is not the best idea in terms of the kind of getting the information that you need to know that the decisions you're making are going to impact folks ahead. And I work with some co-ops that started out undercapitalized, and I tell you, they're still struggling today, even after 10 years, 12 years, 14 years of being open. A lot of people have suffered to keep those co-ops open, and they're still suffering today to try to figure out how they can make up that gap. Because at 1% profit a year, if you're profitable, is not enough to make up for some of the things that people say, well, oh, after we open, we'll take care of that. All the money will be rolling in, and we'll do that after we open. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Grocery is an expensive industry to buy into, and so you want to start off really sharp and have a little bit of a leeway for when things happen. And then steering committee members are better leaders when they understand the basics of the grocery business. So that's my presentation.
Well, you got a lot of questions lining up the chat, so we're going to
I'm
keep you busy.
so excited about this. So I'm going to stop sharing and look at the chat.
I wonder if we could start with the one from Long Beach because it kind of sets up some of the other questions. They're a little more specific, but where are the resources? I start always like, where can we get more on this? Like, I know exactly where everything and all the costs. Like, where can I get more information about, all of where this kind of data about for our performa about where the money's gonna go.
Yeah, so there are experts in pro formas. I know Sarah Liebert's at Columinate does. I know NCG has folks that do it that can walk you through pro forma. I think that's actually pretty important for folks to learn about. I worked with a co-op where the manager was working with the pro forma person, and the pro forma person would say, "Well, this is the standard entry wage in your state for people doing that job," and the manager was like, "No, no, let's lower that." In the pro forma to try to make the pro forma come up with a zero. They were cutting out things. I said, you can't actually cut that out. That's actually necessity. So really understanding the things that are in your pro forma and asking questions, know what you don't know and be willing to do that. And I didn't see that question.
It's hard to keep track of what's going on as people be adding things. That was from Long Beach.
Yeah.
What are the resources for where we can find this data as we
Mhm.
prepare pro formas? And like Jade said, please allow the experts to be the experts here. And FCI has no horse in this race. We don't recommend things to make money. We don't get a cut. They're the pro forma experts in the industry know exactly what's happening with every one of those dollars right now at this moment in the co-op industry, not 2 years ago. And they're going to bring that data. And they're getting
They
that from a national database.
They do, and it is going to be impacted by your national information, right? I mean, sorry, your state information, your local information that they not won't necessarily know. So you might have a situation where you just don't have a lot of potential staff, right? And so you know in advance you're going to have to raise your prices a little bit more, your wages higher in order to attract people. And your pro forma person may not know that, right? It's like, oh, we have a tiny community. People leave to get jobs and they need more to make money. So those are the kinds of things going through those pro formas really carefully and understanding them is important. And I've worked with more than one co-op where I've looked at the pro forma. I looked at the pro forma and I said, this is not feasible. And I called up, I was Sarah, and I said, I'm working with this co-op. Their pro forma shows that their project is not feasible. And right now they're going ahead and they're not, doing the money. And she said, I know, I told them. And so it's just, and I was just like, wow, that's not, I mean, you can open the store, but it might not take long for it to close after that. And all the years it takes to get to opening a co-op. And I know it can be frustrating if you've put a lot of years into it and you just some for whatever reason can't make the numbers match. Um, and sometimes it's just that, oh, let's just go ahead and do it. Um, but I think a couple times about that just because I have seen some of the costs of that and asking folks for, well, what are some co-ops that are struggling? I'm thinking right now as I'm talking to you all that that might be a great session
Mhm.
for FCI is to get some co-ops that have failed.
We
And
try. It's really hard to get folks to come and talk. If you haven't seen it, if you go to the FCI website and search Prairie Roots, the Prairie Roots
Mhm.
Food Co-op was considered one that was like a gold star gonna win, and they closed. And they did a whole video on exactly why. It's
Yeah,
rare if people come back and tell you that. The Renaissance Co-op grocers also through NPQ magazine did a full synopsis of why they failed. So
they
those
have
were
a
people.
video, but I want to say actually, I was their court. I was worked with them for a period of time, and so they're not really grocers, and so there's things that they actually didn't put in there that I would say I would
I would
put this
agree.
in there.
I
So
would agree.
some of us, what's that?
I said I would fully agree with you on that. Yep.
Yeah, there were some things missing. And so I think that the not realizing how much learning there is to do. I know some of you are probably familiar with Jessica Gordon Nemhart's Collective Courage resource. It's a book that she's written about African American cooperative economic thought and practice. And one of the things she says in her book is that most of the co-ops that she studied started as study groups. The people actually studied what they were learning to do in an industry they're going in. And I think because my guess is that because so many of us are grocery consumers, grocery looks easy to us. And like I'm now the facilitator for the board at River Valley Co-op, and they had a merchandising manager come and talk to the co-op for 20 minutes. And I didn't understand half of what he said. This was just one manager in one thing. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about because the competition is so stiff that you really need to to offer people something when they come. And I do remember my own experience with Renaissance Grocery. I went, I think, on the third day that it opened. And one of the things I remember was looking at the shelves. They didn't look like the shelves of any grocery store I had been in. And the way I describe it was kind of like just a blur. Like I would just look at it, just like so many things. Like there were a thousand, it looked like there were 1,000 different kinds of Campbell soup, that kind of thing. And what I realized later, I didn't know what the word was for it, but it was merchandising. I'm used to seeing an end cap. It has like a special thing. There's a couple stuff that stands out, and I'll stop and look at this. Just little ways to get you stop and browse. And this was more like just a blur of things. And I said they just didn't know that that was something that would impact how people would buy stuff. And then they had so many products that they expired really quickly. They had like this turnover. They had difficulty with distributorship. There were just so many things. So talking to some experts um, early on in the your project, I think is really important. And find out what they know. What is their experience? Because I do see folks out there doing this who haven't actually had the experience
Mhm.
of what they're talking about. And that doesn't mean they don't have things to offer. I wouldn't say that. But I would definitely check and say, well, have you actually done this? And who has done it and that kind of thing. So there are other questions?
Oh, there's lots. Oh, I don't think we're gonna get
Okay,
to all of them.
sorry. I'll
It's
keep
okay. You're
going.
good. No, some of them are a little more like, not we're exactly what we're talking about. But would like resources as well for when we're questioned by people about co-ops and they ask, where are you getting all this from? It gives us credibility in conversations. And that could be a lot of different resources, so you can kind of take that where you want, Jade.
Well, so yes, there are so many different resources about co-ops. I would say ICA.coop, the International Cooperative Alliance, has just incredible resource of information about co-ops. There's co-op principles and co-op values that are recognized by co-ops around the world, and they're sort of the holder of these. And a co-op really, essentially, they have the co-op definition of a cooperative I'm going to try it, association of persons um, what is the word? They're gathered to meet their needs and aspirations in a democratically owned and democratically controlled enterprise, something like that. Anyway, so it's an association of persons as a co-op, and that it meets its needs through an enterprise. And so the definition is out there. It's an exciting business model because it's owned by the people that use it. That's why it's exciting to me. I think that's really super cool.
We have
So,
some really specialized questions here, but I
yeah,
will bring
please.
it up. One of the things, a good one, a really good one to bring up, and I answered it, but I think I'd like to hear your answer. Do you suggest we don't give the member discount at the register when we are getting started? And you kind of touched this, but it still came out like there are a lot of startups feel like people assume that what the co-op means is if they own it, they're going to get a discount. And I've seen startups go, but we have to start that way to convince
Yeah,
people there's value. What do you think?
I tend to disagree that I mean with the one that every time you shop, I
Hmm.
kind of like the once a month or co-op special days for co-op owners because it's a little bit more controllable. But the idea for me, it kind of makes us more like Costco or BJ's or something. Oh, we buy it to get a discount, and it's really a different relationship. It's you're investing in the co-op so that your community has resiliency. And when we opened, my co-op opened in 2008, which was the largest economic downturn since the Great Depression. And we had a number of producers in our area come to us really afterwards, like crying, like we would have closed if you hadn't opened, because we specialize in carrying local products. And so we do stuff. I've seen co-ops too. They say, well, we don't want to um, donate or help community efforts until we make a profit. And I'm like, ooh, you kind of want to be who you are from the start. People have heard it before. When X, when our ship comes in, we'll do X. I think it has to be part of your business model that you are who you are. So for me, I wouldn't want to connect, oh, an ownership means you'll get a discount. That's sort of like an appreciation thing because you'll probably, if you're profitable, you'll get a patronage at the end of the year. So I would say I wouldn't do it so that, oh, I get a discount because I'm a member because, in the end, that's not going to serve you in my mind. And I'm not again, I'm not an operator. I work on leadership, but there's a lot more to a co-op than a discount. So another
And as a
question.
past very experienced operator who's worked with a lot of startups only startups I've seen insist on doing this. It did not do them favors. They are not still open. It was definitely not the only factor, but I've only seen it at startups that are not still open. So for what it's worth. I think it's a good question Scott had. Why does Walmart charge 155 for that milk? Why don't they just cover all their costs? Is it because shoppers would basically prefer a different shopping experience but can't pass up how cheap Walmart is? Is that our kind of our opening?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm not a merchandiser, but my guess is like, okay, I used to be a kombucha addict. And anytime I go in a store, I go straight to the kombucha. And whatever the price, I expected the kombucha to cost $3.99.
Hmm.
And if it costs less than $3.99, I go, oh, this is a cheap store. And if it costs more than that, I go, oh, they're overpriced. And it would impact what I would buy in the store. So this idea of loss leaders is they want to look like, oh, whoa, I can get milk for $1.35. I mean, that keeps people coming back. They think they immediately translate, oh, everything must be cheaper here. And the truth is, we've done comparisons with our local co-op here, and we're cheaper on a lot of products than are these other stores. But they're able to create the illusion of that by having the loss leaders be a lot cheaper. So that would be my guess is why Walmart does that. They don't
Right
have to, but
on.
I mean, they make money hand over fist. So they can afford. In fact, I'll just say when we opened our co-op here, we have a number of grocery chains in the area, and we discovered that the ones in our town, had cheaper prices than all the ones outside of our area because they were trying to wait us out, just
Hmm.
lower their prices because they had a chain. They could do that and be cheaper
Absolutely.
than us. So that's why the chains are a little dangerous. But we actually have really good relationships with the Big Y that's right next to our store because their business actually increased when we opened because the things people can't get from the co-op, they stop on that store on the way back. And so we try to be good neighbors to everybody.
So there's lots of questions getting into now some of the real details about merchandising and susceptibility to shrinkage but you're right, loss leaders also help prevent shrinkage and allow you to move more volume, you're right. But Jay's answer is dead on. It amazes me over and over again that how much we need to Jade said some things are counterintuitive. The reality is we think we know and we are being fooled. And so you don't realize how much like just Walmart having the ridiculously cheap milk that they're paying people to take. I've gone and done price comparisons at Walmart many a time, and on conventional, they don't beat anyone in town practically ever, other than a couple of things like milk. But they don't beat anybody. But they have created an image and it works.
Yep. And that's why, you have to, in my mind, well, we were very fortunate at River Valley Market. That's my River Valley Co-op, or my home co-op. We had Rochelle Prunty, and she'd worked as a co-op general manager before. And so she kind of knew that we had to hit the ground running and be really good at what we were doing when we opened, because people don't change their shopping habits very easily. And so there was a lot of hoopla, there were a lot of ways she involved us in it. We had you know, we had what's it called when you dig the ground?
Oh,
We-
groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking. We actually had a groundbreaking thing. We got that. We had everybody come for that. We had a wooden porch thing in the front. We had a barn, like a barn raising event where everybody came and did that. We've just done so many ways that she's included the community. And that's the thing I think for startups, building the building is going to be one of your easiest things that you do. You just pay people for that. It's the relationship building that's really going to get you through it. And that's actually why those co-ops that opened up under resource are still open, is because they have relationships and people that care. But still, they're suffering. Don't get me wrong. It's
Hmm.
tough to be on a board of a co-op that's losing money, and may close any moment. That's very tough. But it's the relationship. So that's why co-ops take so long to open too. I mean, you're saying, oh, we've been working so hard to get the money. I'm like, well, yes. And there's a lot of money actually out there for some of these things. But harder is building those associations and helping people understand how you're different than your competitors. Because yeah, they're going to shop at the other grocery stores. They're not going to stop doing that. But they're also, most of them won't. But they'll also realize the value of the co-op and they'll keep coming because it works for them, because it meets their needs in some way.
Absolutely. We've got some more questions and they're very detaily. So I'm
I'm
just going to
wondering
put
where you're seeing these questions from. I keep
it's so
looking.
mixed into the conversation because then people reply and then that goes to the bottom. And so it's like,
Uh,
but I was watching them all along. So a couple detaily ones. People were like, what about, have you ever seen a food co-op that has like a child play area, like a McDonald's? And I'm going to group with that. What do you think about food boxes and like us doing meal kits? I'm going to group those together for a reason I think you know, Jade, and hand them to you.
well, I really think that if you're on a steering committee or you're a leader, I would really leave these questions to the staff of the co-op. I really think that your ability to manage that and make that part of your business is going to be a part of whether you're profitable or not. Because imagine, if you have a play area for children, you're going to need somebody there to be overseeing it. And that person's going to need to have special skills, and they're going to need to be there whether you have one person in the store or whether you have 1,000 people in the store. So there's all those kinds of things, while they're great ideas, and they're not a bad ideas to float, they're going to fit into, are we going to be able to provide this? And if you're going to provide some special service or some unique thing, um, I definitely say leave it to the experts because they can try stuff, see if it works. Because your community, I mean, for example, River Valley, we had asked folks in advance, do you want us to carry organic natural food or do you want us to carry conventional? And the resounding answer was 50-50. And so fast forward, he nods. What actually happened? People don't buy their conventional stuff at our store. So they just don't. I mean, they don't. So we ended up, they said what they wanted, but what they said and what they actually bought was different. So that's one of the reasons why I think leaving it to operations, unless it's super essential to who you are as an organization, um, leave it to the folks that you've hired. And you can certainly talk about it with them. Hey, we think we like this. What do you think? And they'll look into it or not. So.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
prices, I love how people are focusing on prices because we are such a price sensitive species. And we get a lot of dopamine when we get a sale, even if we're millionaires. You get a dopamine from a sale. So it's kind of tricky what we're trying to do here. But I tell you, people love their co-op so much. And I know each of you has a reason that you're passionate about opening your co-op. And mine's been life-changing for me. So I wouldn't change this journey for anything. And I imagine many of you, it's working with people that are really cool to create something that you really care about that can make a big difference in your community. What more exciting thing is there to do? Thanks, Christina.
I want to take the moment for all of us to thank Jade for being here with us, for sharing her wisdom, her ex and decades of experience with this, and her unique mind that understands exactly what you guys are thinking about and asking yourselves, because she's been there too as someone who did not intend to be a grocer. That was not the plan. So thank you so much to Jade for being here with us and sharing her perspective. And oh, I forgot. Some people asked, Jade, if they put their email in the chat, I will get it to you. Would you be willing, are you okay with sharing the PowerPoint or the, not the PowerPoint, the PDF of your slides, or would
Yes,
you?
absolutely.
Okay.
Happy to share
So the
that.
way this
And
works with FCI is if you put your email in the chat, I will give it to Jade, but we don't share your information without your permission. So you got to do that. And then I will give it to Jade and she'll get you her PDF of the slides. But you
okay,
will get
great.
from us Friday a link to the video. So you will have this video and we will email that to you Friday. Real quickly, want to thank all of our sponsors. And actually, this is last year's slide. I just realized I've been messing this up because some of these folks didn't, but we had a record number of sponsors this year. I don't think anyone's missing. There's a few people listed on here who actually, I don't know if they did. But thank you so much to all of our sponsors for making this series possible. And we've got more coming. Tonight, we're talking about Stage 5, the brand new stage in the framework that was mostly created actually by the experiences of NCG. We agreed on, as an industry with them. And so we're talking what that is. It means after you're done opening your co-op, you're not done being a startup. So come find out what that means and how you survive that phase and what to expect. And then tomorrow, co-op and nonprofit collaboration. It's going to be a case study with Three Sisters Market. But if you've heard of Gem City Market, if you have heard of Detroit People's Food Co-op, these are startups that were organized in the beginning by nonprofits. And it's a model that is continuing to show promise. And so they are going to talk Three Sisters that are in the midst of organizing about their process of being started by a nonprofit, how they collaborate with that nonprofit while creating an independent food co-op. Also, North Flint Food Co-op,
Right.
same model. So those two are coming up tomorrow, and we've got one more that evening and sessions on Wednesday and Thursday, and we hope that you will join us. And I'm going to stop recording. Excuse